All right. So we're finally here.
Finally.
So welcome to Talkin Shop. And I'm joined today by our good friend, David McCurdie. I'm sure he's well known. If not, Davey, as he goes by, is a great guy in many ways. And hopefully that also comes across in this podcast. But before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. So again, just to let everybody know, what we discussed today is our personal views. It's not the views of our employer, not to be taken as legal advice. If you do have specific questions to anything you have, please reach out to your internal compliance team or legal team. Again, I will be kind of hosting this, but I want it to be more of a conversation, so not more of a moderation as other Talking Shop episodes. But so I'm the founder of NFCP. My name is Louis Vargas, in case you don't know. And if you would like to become a member, go to our website, nfcp.info. Follow us on LinkedIn. All of our content is there. And also at the beginning of the year, we moved all of our podcasts to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And it's already on YouTube. So you have many places to find us. No excuses. All right. So without further ado, David, if you want to just introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, I'd love to. And to your housekeeping point about all opinions are correct, but they are not those of our employers or my employer or any past or present. Yeah, my name's David McCurdie. As you mentioned in your monologue there, I'm known as Davey. I get called Davey a lot, and some people call me the KYC guy.
Yes,
and that's not a thing. Genuinely, the LinkedIn thing. It was like I didn't want to write what I did as a job on my subtitle, so I said, "What am I? I just wrote, I'm a KYC guy. That's all I've done." So yeah, my story is basically that I've always worked in KYC. I've done it for about 19 years in some form or another, doing of the KYC, and then moving slightly or pivoting slightly into some of the delivering or helping to deliver change with the acquisition of technology or data or changing up processes to try and improve the way in which we do KYC. And then also have a foot in the vendor or supplier side, working with the technology and the data to essentially support that. And honestly, to make people like me redundant, right? I want to make me redundant. That's my whole thing, right? I want to find a way to make me redundant because we should, right? I think that we should all be maybe not all. I think we should all try and find a way to make whatever it is you were doing for a job redundant so you can do something else. I like doing new things, as you know from my career history, right? So that's my story basically. I've really just, been deeply into it for so long. I tried to get out of it, but I just couldn't. It just pulled me back in.
Godfather, exactly.
I thought I was they pulled me back in. So yeah, yes. Exactly. He would play me in the movie of my life if that's one of your questions.
Thanks for sharing. And yeah, it's been a great career. We met, I guess, first, before we get into that, it is Saturday morning. We're hanging out at the beautiful Hotel St. Anne in downtown Copenhagen, or near Norda, if you know Copenhagen. I'm here with the cardigan. You know why? Because I know this guy, even though he told me street clothes, he was going to still be spiffy. So I try to, match him a little bit.
This is street clothes. These are street clothes. If you know New Haven, Connecticut, 1961, then these are street clothes.
Yale man.
In spirit, I didn't even go to college, right? I did not go to university. I don't have the attention span. I was too much of a class clown to be in an audience. I saw a classroom as an audience, and I started to do my jokes, and then I got in trouble. So no, I'm not a Yale man. A Yale man in spirit only.
So we met quite a few years ago. I was working for Danske Bank at the time. Right. Do you remember who you were working for at the time? Yeah,
I was at Pega, I think. It was a slight dig, but I was with Pega. And I love that little backhanded. Nice, Louis. Yeah, I was at Pega. I had a tremendous time working there, and Pega's all about that whole, trying to help orchestrate the entire fin crime life cycle, or the client life cycle in the fin crime value chain, and automate the hell out of the work. It really talks to me because that's what I want to do. I want to automate the work that I used to do manually, right? And people still do.
Yeah. But what really struck me about you and why I've kind of gravitated towards you even over the years is that you're always very personable. It's all about the relationship. Mm-hmm. So even though what you were working on was focused on KYC or maybe building out a function for fin crime, you were just like, all right, I'm going to talk to this guy from sanctions. We're going to have a coffee. We're going to have a chat. I'm sure probably in the back of your mind, it was like, oh, maybe I could get fin sanctions to jump on board. But it didn't come off as a hard sell. It was just like, hey, tell me about what you're doing. This is my background. Yeah. To be quite honest, I don't even know if Danske Bank the sanctions team ever jumped on board with that project. But you know, we've maintained our friendship over the years. And so I'm really happy that you could join us today.
No, I'm delighted to be here. And it's funny, as I go through life, I just keep collecting more. Like, it's like one of the like Pokemon cards or whatever the kids play with, right? I just like keep collecting people, and I've got this amazing, I'm really delighted to have it. Amazing network of friends. I consider them friends. I don't see I never saw anyone as a sales opportunity in the strictest sense. I saw everyone as I can make a lot of friends here because I believe, and I'm a buyer of, I like to buy things, I like to sell things, I like to buy things, right? People who work in sales tend to like to buy things too and be sold to. I love it. So I love creating relationships, and I find I'm very loyal to the brands or the things that I've bought where I've had the best experience with people. Mm-hmm. I just like people. I'm just fascinated by people. Like, I met you because I think I was aware of you, I think, through LinkedIn anyway, but I went and found you. I think I was meeting someone else, and I said, take me to Louis Vargas. I wanted to meet him, and we'd spoken, and then we went for a juice or a coffee or something. Yeah. I just keep everyone. I keep a network. It's important to me. It means a lot to me to have a lot of people that I can call upon, because this is a great little network you've got here as well. You've done tremendous work with it. We've got like Mitchell, for example, Mitchell White. He'll message me and say, hey, do you know anything about this thing? And I'll say, not me. Usually I don't know anything about what he's asking. Trade-based money laundering. And I was like, but I might know a guy, and I'll put you in touch. I just love being like an interlocutor, I just want to put people together always. I've got an unpaid career of being a recruitment guy. I've recruited a lot of people, right? I've moved a lot of people into a lot of jobs. And one day it'll pay me back if I ever need to change jobs. But you know me, Louis, I don't change that much.
What's also, I think, quite funny before we kind of getting into talking shop is not to be stereotypical, but I remember one day I reached out to Davey and I was like, you know who you remind me of? This actor, Alan Cummings. And you were like, yeah, we're both Scottish. And I thought he was going to say, that's pretty racist. Why are you saying we all look alike? But then you actually text me a photo of you and Alan Cummings on the streets of Copenhagen.
That's right. And my dad told me that I looked like Alan Cumming like years ago. Yeah, he told me years ago. Okay. Before I even knew who it was like, was that the guy from The High Life? It was like an old 90s BBC Scotland comedy. And I was like, I don't look anything like him. And then I went back and I was like, oh, shit. But yeah, I met him in Copenhagen. I was on the street. It was chucking it down with rain. And he was filming a travel show, I think. I had an umbrella. And Scottish people, we don't mind just talking to anyone. And so I just said, "Hoi, Cummings." Oi, Cumming, what are you doing here? And he was like, hi, do we know each other? Like, he was straight away very personable. Scottish, of course, a personable guy. And he was like, do you want to go for a drink? And I was like, I've got my son with me, I can't really, like, it's not really going to fly. So, he's great. I actually really enjoy him. I like the show he did with Miriam Margolyes with the travel thing where they're a real like odd couple. I don't know if you get that here, but it was I like him. He's all right.
That's cool.
What is he in? He's in something, right? Like Billions or some kind of show that everyone watches.
True, yeah.
I
haven't seen it, but I've seen him in other bits here and there, and he's always an entertaining character.
He's a character, all right. He's a character, right. You know what? Like, I'm the worst guy. Like, I haven't seen any shows, right? People are like, have you seen this thing? No. And then I think that any movie that was made like post 2000 is new. And that's 25, 26 years ago. But I think they're all new. So like, I'm the worst guy about watching series. You know this, and I've said it before. I watch one series repeatedly and religiously, and it's Mad Men. I watch it every year without fail, and usually about winter time. Oh, wow. I think, yeah, it's like there's a lot going on with me, Louis. We might delve into it in this thing. We might not, hopefully not. Like, I've got this sort of like these behaviors and these habits of repeating things and doing things as a comfort thing, maybe. I don't know, but I watch the same shows all the time. Yeah, Alan Cumming, I haven't seen much of his.
I'm the same way with shows. I think I've seen The Office, the US Office a million times, the UK Office a few times. Yeah. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is on repeat. So I'm the same way. I'm a creature of comfort, and I'll laugh at the same jokes.
Yeah.
I've heard.
Good, then we'll get along really well then, because I make the same jokes all the time.
All right. I mean, let's start talking shop. I mean, we could sit here and talk about other things, but let's just dive into it. So the first kind of question I had for you, being the KYC guy, is...
Wait, I have to call you back on this. Yeah. I never wanted to be the KYC guy. I just wrote,
It just happened.
I just wrote KYC guy as KYC guy. I'm not the KYC guy. There are far more KYC guys and girls than me. But it just happened that way. And now people are like, hey, the KYC guy. And it's like, it's become a thing. And I'm leaning into it, but it wasn't the KYC.
All right, we're going to say this is Talking Shop with the man, the myth, the legend.
That's fine. That's exactly how I want it to be called. That's what I put in the thing. You haven't paid me my fee for this yet either.
The check is in the mail. Have your people call my people.
Sorry, go on. Please, the KYC guy.
So being the KYC guy, could you walk us through your experience of what you've seen in the trenches, both as a practitioner, but also, as you said, now you moved to the vendor side?
Yeah. Yeah, you know this because you were there fixing my camera equipment and microphones today. But I've just sat and done a show for my actual job with a friend of mine, Karen Mickelson, friend of NFCP as well. And we both have been in the trenches and worked together in 2007-8. I think I joined at Saxo Bank, and we did the doing of the KYC. And we were talking about it today. And it was that when we were doing it, it wasn't even KYC. It was called contracts administration, and it was an account opening. It was an account opening function, right. And it was very much an operational tick box thing. Right. So when people say compliance is not a tick box thing, like, for that part, it was to a large extent. And I fell into that. Honestly, it was something for someone who's got a really short attention span or not really able to do like things for a long time without getting bored easily and things. That one was like a muscle memory thing. It became quite like, I was able to do it and my head could be somewhere else and I was still good at it. Yeah. Somehow I've got a good eye. I can really spot inconsistencies. I spot typos and spelling mistakes and things a mile off. Like honestly, like errant apostrophes, I'm on it. So like the KYC thing really worked for me in that respect because I'm able to read large texts very quickly and find things out and understand them. So the kind of things that I saw and looked into and was really involved in and really enjoyed doing was delving very deeply into like hedge funds and like, legal entity structures, which are quite exotic, let's say. Right. So I really enjoyed that and really figuring out where our risk was and things. But back in those days, it was contracts administration. And actually, I was reminded today, we didn't have a concept of ongoing due diligence. We didn't come back and revisit these relationships until 2010. Right. So it was just get them in. And there was very little in the way of checks and there was very little in the way of monitoring. Mm-hmm. But I got through a lot and I learned a lot about Cayman Islands, segregated portfolio companies, protected cell companies and Jersey, Guernsey and Isle of Man and things. I loved all that stuff. I got into bearer shares. Like I really loved it. The hedge fund stuff was great. I learned a lot. Working at Saxo Bank was terrific because you got a lot of exposure to a lot of things, right? You were doing a screening. We didn't have the disciplines in fin crime or the pillars of fin crime in separate functions. It was like, we do onboarding, right. We're doing the screening there. There's a transaction monitoring capability somewhere. I didn't really see that, but it was there. Definitely it was. But you got a lot of exposure to a lot of things and it gave me a lot. So I enjoyed that.
And super international too, because of the clients, but also the software they were selling. So yeah. I'm sure you had, you saw some of that action.
Yeah, I always thought it was a great place. Honestly, a fantastic place. Came in right at the sort of like boom time of Saxo. They'd been around for a few years before I joined. In 2007-8, they were hiring massively and they were moving into the new HQ, which is still there today and they're still working and it still looks largely as it did when we moved in. It's beautiful. And there was a lot of growth there at the time. But then actually the financial crisis of 2008 hit. And I was in the door about 3 or 4 months and I was thinking, well, I'm surely not going to be. And genuinely, they had this concept where we were all kind of huddled together in an office. Actually, we had an office in the shopping centre across the road, the waterfront shopping centre. And they had this concept where they called your name and you go up and you collected a letter, and if the letter had you're fired, or it was
slipped like from everybody, like
yeah,
David McCurdie, and then
they were
like
yeah, and I was being like a bit like, so, it's all right. I've been here 3 months and I'm just a cool 21-year-old or 22-year-old dude. I don't care anyway. They're going to fire me. And I opened up the letter and it said you're staying, and I was like. Internally, I was like, thank God for that, because I saw a lot of tenured people, in tears and, shoulder to cry on things. It was a bloodbath. It was about 350 people, I think, went that day. Wow. And the news were all over it. The papers were outside. Don't give interviews to BT or the newspapers and stuff. But a tremendous place to work. I came in at the growth time, moved into the new office with it. And, we also, as Kerry and I discussed today, we also had this perfect storm of some regulatory kind of events and things that we had to get on top of. We had to do remediation because we hadn't collected, the appropriate level of information for corporate or corporate customers or clients for directors and ownership or ownership control. We had Dodd-Frank, I think, in 2010 as well. And then we had something else as well. And we were creating an AML manual as well. So all these things happened at the same time. And that just propelled us into a much more mature organization for doing KYC. And
the trial by fire, you would say?
A little bit, and that's how you that's why they are innovative, though, right? Like I like the FAFO. I learn by I fuck around and find out, right?
Exactly.
And that's entrepreneurs, right? They go and do things. You're never gonna, you know what? I love you're Americans, so I hope you'll get this and enjoy this. But I love this thing about how, you know, if someone in Europe, someone in Denmark said on your show, Louis, actually, I'm going to move out of think crime because I'm going to send a rocket to Mars and I'm going to put people on Mars by 2027. We would all find fault with that and go, well, have you thought about this? And what about the regulation? And have you thought about the environment and things? But you say that in America, they'll say, sure, you can, buddy. Of course you can. You can do what, you know, if you believe it, you can do it, you know? And I love that entrepreneurial spirit of companies like Saxo Bank who are like, we're out there and we're just doing it our way. We're not going to be bound by the constructs or the expected behaviours of the society in Denmark, which expects, you know, that jantelov kind of thing, where they expect you to, you know, you must be very modest and don't try and teach us anything that you know that we don't know or whatever. So they were not, you know, Danske Bank, or they were not Nordea or Jyske Bank. We're Saxo Bank. We do things our way, and they really did. Like we went to Iceland in the 2008 after they had a massive, you know, thing. We went there for our Christmas party and we went swimming in the Blue Lagoon, and it was December and Iceland was on its arse at the time, and it was a bizarre time for everyone, but we were there partying. And then they flew us all out to Egypt in 2010 or 11, I think, for one of the 30th birthday or 25th, I think, 25th. And we all went to Egypt and they spent money and they enjoyed it and they made a splash, and that's how they did it, and they innovate, and they do that because they don't want to be, you know, held back by the naysayers and what's expected. And I guess that's what, you know, you fuck around and find out thing.
But that sounds cool in one aspect, but I'm sure a lot of people, the compliance officers, are like, oh man, this is also trouble, just doing your own thing and blazing a trail and probably forgetting about the compliance that needs to kind of happen to keep everything safe. Did you, I guess, you know, I try to say this nicely, but, you know, did you see some of the potential of that too? Like you're moving too fast and compliance is kind of dragging behind? Yeah.
I mean, like I probably can't speak about cases, but I've seen cases in my career. I don't have to say where. I've worked in consulting as well, a brokerage which had a Section 166 FCA order against it. And I've seen some really like things that you'd think, wow, like. And I think, okay, so it's fair to say then you kind of touched on it, but I think, you know, my journey in KYC, it diverges from I said to Kerry today on this interview we did today, I could be the best KYC guy in the world or the worst, because I'm very good at the detail, but I also try and understand the impact on the customer, about what we're asking, why we're asking it. Is it proportionate? Does it make sense for the business? Does it make sense for the customer? But in another sense, because I'm so commercially minded, and that's now I've migrated or moved into where I'm probably supposed to be, which is a commercially minded sort of function. I could also be the worst one because maybe I'm not sweating the small things too much. So I'm thinking big picture, like, whatever, we can do it, you know? So mine was always, can we find a way to do the thing within the confines of our risk appetite or the regulatory landscape? Mine was never to, let's find something wrong with this and decline or reject or stop the process. Mine was always like, could we find a way? You know, have we got enough information from here, despite the fact that this document is, you know, very old or it's not quite whatever, or the passport, Louis' passport's out of date, or, you know, but we'll say, well, we've got this much from here, here, and here. We could argue that we've got enough, you know? So I was always much more the context, or like contextual, or maybe like let's try and look at the bigger picture and see how to do it.
Holistic view.
Yeah. I much preferred that. And that's where I really started to deviate and move into where I am now, because I was like, it shouldn't be like this. I don't want to look at KYC as being let's look for a problem and just reject and not give any answers to why, because I sat with teams that had the client-facing responsibilities, and I heard what the impact was on our clients or our would-be clients because of the things that we were asking them. And I've always had that in my mind since doing that. I know when at Nordea, we were talking about having to introduce a number of sanctions-related questions into the KYC process, which to me, on the face of it, I was like, man, we're going to break KYC and we're going to not have any customers, because we're asking, essentially, there was suggestion that we might even look at, could we just ask everyone the same questions? How does the barbershop on the corner understand their sanctions obligations? How does the hairdresser around there know what they are classified under FATCA? So like, I always felt like we need to do something that's on the client side. I'm a client first person, but I also have that foot in the KYC.
I feel like that's a very Nordic approach too. because it's like trusting the data you have, trying to not bother the customer with unnecessary questions. Where, you know, as you said, I'm American and we have a don't trust first attitude. And then when it's proven, then we slightly trust you. We still don't fully trust you.
You've got good reason to not trust the government. That's why you've got the Second Amendment anyway, right? And you've also got good reason not to trust because of, CIA assassinating JFK, possibly, allegedly, whatever. I understand why there's that distrust of authority. I think America itself is a rebellious nation anyway, so they've got a rebellious spirit, right? They rebelled against the British colonizers. 250 years ago, right? It's 250 years since the birth of America. So I get it. And I think here we trust more, right? It's a culture of trust here. I remember working with a Norwegian guy who's an account manager at Saxo Bank, and he dealt with all these Norwegian, very wealthy dudes. And I'd have to ask him, I would say, we're going to need these documents. And he'd say, but David, why do we need these documents? I know this guy, I know his brother and his family. They're a very good family from Bergen, and we don't need to ask the questions. I know him really well. He's got a boat. His brother is the shoemaker. But it's a thing of trust. I think, maybe we're more used to, in the UK and the US, we're more used to, devious criminals who are here to try and subvert or to try and breach or, to do that. And I think here they're not as used to it. And now they've had to get used to it in very short order, right? They've had to get used to the fact that now Denmark, Sweden, their systems are being exploited by unscrupulous criminals. Right. We're seeing a lot of fraud things in Sweden at the moment. A lot of people getting called up in these phishing scams and all frauds that's happening with all the banks implicated. And I think they've had to go from, but we all had a very trust first kind of culture. And it's a real shame. It's the thing I was thinking this morning, and I was thinking if you would let me swear on the show, I think I've done it already. It's like, do you know something, Louis? I fucking hate thieves. Thieving is the worst. Like people who steal. Because do you know what? I also want to live in a world of trust, and I just want to be like, I met the guy, he seems nice enough, and I'd love to be in that place, because now we have to do all these extra things to make sure that we're on the level, and it completely spoils the experience.
Oh yeah.
Right? And you see the greater reach of the, AML directives now mean that other businesses and other industries are now in there, insurance, buying anything over a certain value, you've got to do a certain thing. Football is now going to be involved because it's high value transfers of players and things. More things are getting pulled into this cause crime, because people who don't want to play nice. I hate that, Louis. It pisses me off.
I agree, but even the society of the Nordics that has the kind of culture of trust, they're bad actors here.
There are.
So it's not like international global pressure changing the mindset here. It's that they're also uncovering the fact that there are bad actors here, and there's more.
And they're always there.
Yeah,
they're always
everywhere, right? Bad things happen everywhere, I like to say.
True.
We live here in the safest, maybe one of the safest cities in the world, in Copenhagen, but crime is still a thing. Pickpockets is still a thing. Violent crime still happens, but of course not at the magnitude of London and New York City. But that's why you kind of always have to be kind of aware of your surroundings. And that's how I feel about financial crime. It's like, okay, we're low risk. And yes, we could maybe treat customers a bit different, but we have to keep our eyes on the potential of something happening.
Yeah.
And having the right kind of documentation in place to have that comfortability.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a story. We had a work event last night, and one of my colleagues was telling me that he was pickpocketed on the metro here. And I'm like, pickpockets do not operate here. And actually, I was on the metro going to the airport on my last trip last month before Christmas, and it said, there are pickpockets operating right now on this train. And I'm like, how about instead of the message, just get someone on and stop the pickpocket.
Right.
But I mean, it's a thing now. It's definitely become a thing. And it's not, you're right, it's not an imported problem. There's always been criminals for as long as there has been industry of any kind, right? There's always been someone who's been, I guess that now that we've got a bit more regulation in it as well, a bit more government involvement in things that set the rules for what things are. When you get rules, then there'll be more breaking of the rules because there are rules, right? Yeah. And when there are no rules in the Industrial Revolution, there are very few rules about how much smoke you can send up. It's like, who cares? It's like burn another, let's put another few coals on the fire and keep the industry moving, So now, of course, with greater regulation and scrutiny comes obviously more. There's more rule breaking anyway.
and even legal loopholes, right? Like you said, if there's rules, there's always ways to break it. But also, you're like you said, there's always people trying to circumvent. So
Yeah.
nature of the human nature, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, honestly, Copenhagen is a very safe place, and but I'll tell you what. And I've lived here on 2 stints, 6.5 years first time, maybe like 3.5 second time. I've been a victim of crime more in Copenhagen than I have in London. Yes, and even violent crime as well.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been assaulted here out of the blue. I've been at my house. Someone tried to break into my house. In my apartment in the middle of town, like many years ago. Fun fact, but I basically woke up in the middle of the night, or I was woken up in the middle of the night, and managed to run to the kitchen and grab a knife off the wall and chase him out, and he fell out the window. So he was just about to get in the window, then he fell out the back and ran. I shouted something unintelligible with some Scotch dialect, and he got terrified. But yeah, I've seen more of it here than I have in London, and that's crazy to say because everyone would have you believe that London is, like a cesspit of like knife crime and things, and I hope I'm not tempting fate here, but when I go home tomorrow, knock on wood, right? But and by the way, I saw some numbers recently that knife crime in London is at its lowest since I don't know when it's down. Crime is down, and there's a lot of a lot of talk out there, the phone thefts and things, but I haven't actually seen it.
But I guess that's a good point to kind of what we were talking about, that we would assume that there would be more crime in a city like London, but actually the way you've experienced it, you've been more a victim of crime here, which is considered low risk and nothing happens here.
Yeah, but maybe that's how I'm behaving as well. Maybe I behave differently in London because I'm more vigilant, right? I mean, like, that's
right.
Right?
People leave that.
And here I'm like, it's so loose, I can just sleep in the doorway, I don't need to go home, I'll just sleep here, like, what they do with the beers on the Christmas beers when they come out in November, I think it's like the first Friday of November or whatever, and it's like everyone's drinking and everyone's drunk, and it's like some people, they look like they've never been drunk before, and then they're lying in doorways like vomiting, and they wake up in the morning, everything's still intact, But you act differently, I think. But yeah, on the fin crime thing, I've definitely seen cases. I've seen a real case with a real money laundering scandal, a sting operation that the US CIA, I think it was, that did this. I can't remember exactly what agency it was, but there was a sting operation with a Cayman broker of sorts, which itself was connected to a bank which had been bought by a guy who was not a legit guy. They did a transaction, like a test transaction, and there was conversation around, this is the cost if you do the transaction. If the money's good, it's this much, and if the money's not so good, then it's a bit more than that. And they did the thing, and the sting operation happened, and one of them went to prison, and one of them did not. And I met them. I've met them in person here in Copenhagen. They came here, and I had a fantastic evening with them. I'm not even kidding you. They were fantastic guys. I had a dinner with them and had a few drinks with them, and it was all lovely. And they were really legit guys and super nice and really, really. And that's the thing, right? So they're not all like evil people wearing masks and having they don't look like that. The criminals are among us, right? They are the nicest guys on the street, and they're the super friendly people who will shake your hand and smile.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. And it's sad that we have to be vigilant like that, but we do.
And I think that's the point I wanted to raise. We have to remain vigilant wherever we are.
You say that at the end of your show, right? I watched one this morning. It's like, stay vigilant. And I was like, when's he going to say stay classy? Mostly stay classy.
Yeah, I think I have to grow my mustache out again to pull off the Van Burgundy. But, you mentioned a lot of your experience working at Saxo toward the end of, the 2000s. But then you also had a stint in another bank doing KYC again. And now in your current role, I guess I'm trying to see, has the operation of KYC changed since then? Is it the same? Yeah, just trying to get a picture since you've seen it kind of in a few different, in 2 different places, maybe more years apart, right? Have you seen a change, or is it the same? Has it gotten better? I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen a change, and I've not, I was this morning chatting to Kerry about this, and in Saxo Bank, in 2007-8, we were doing things which were quite advanced for the time. Now that I've seen it in other banks, in actual, bricks and mortar banks, retail banks, and business, corporate banks, and whatnot, we were doing things way ahead of what they do, and what they did 10 years later, and even some of them today. So like, I think that Saxo was very advanced at the time. We had much more, like we did much more in the way of screening. We did adverse media with a grown up, curated data, pulling from multiple sources, not just an open source thing, like one page of Google. Right. And I've been places and I see and I speak to people every day where some of the things that they're doing today are not even the standard at which we were doing things in 2007, 8. So like, I've seen things change and yet I haven't. I did a presentation, maybe I've still got it and I'll show it to you one day, but I did a presentation in Amsterdam for Pega. I think it was like a partnership thing with Moody's and Pega. And I showed them like a day in the life, what I used to do. Come in the morning, pull a big pack, because all the onboardings of the day were printed out. And I was on the corporates or the non-personal entities. I pull a big pack and I could see how thick it was and I knew why nobody else had picked it up yet.
Was it an old dot matrix printout?
I'm not that old. I mean, come on, I'm not that old. But it was all like, it was like printed out. We had the student assistants or like they call piccolo and piccolina in Danish, like an assistant. And they printed out the stuff, and then I'd pick this pack up and I'd feel the weight of it, and I go, oh, that's a BVI trust, And I'm getting deep into that. That was like pull lots of documents, read lots of documents, pull lots of information from, understand exactly what kind of trust it is, who are the beneficiaries, what kind of trust, is it a blind trust or is it, a discretionary trust, who are the trustees, did they exercise control of the trust, what happens if like lots of stuff to really get out of that documentation. Then you go and try and find things in public sources. Then you go and look at all the passports and all the things of the beneficiaries or the trustees and the trust company as well. So I'm going through the whole, like looking on a page of what I did in a day. And I'm looking at it and going, well, actually, we've automated a lot of that now. The industry, the collective ingenuity of market participants, both banks and subject matter people, like actual practitioners and vendors with the money they've got to go and do things that is needed. We found out a way to figure out how to automate or improve most of the things that I've done, if not all of them. Like we've got OCR, we can extract that information. We've got large language models to understand and provide context. We can compare things very quickly now. We can get registry aggregators where we don't have to go and I used my own card and paid $36.50 in the Cayman Islands for a document which told me very little, by the way, because it's not a very transparent register, right?
Exactly.
So like I was doing that and I never got the money back, and I didn't want to wait for the manager who held the company card in some like gold, some like locked case to bring it out. The company card. I'll be like, I need this. I want to get this thing done. So I'm going to pay the money. I don't care. That's how much I love this thing. So like registry aggregators now, premium sources of data now, CLM providers where the data doesn't have to be control and C, control and read or hand typed in. You feed it in. It moves the case through the process. That's largely been taken care of. And for some time now, a lot of those things, the false positives, what it's like when you get, if I got a Louis Vargas name on my group, I know that it's going to produce a lot of names, right? Because a lot of Spanish names, there's a lot of the US lists have got Spanish names, so Mexican cartels and things like that. So like, it's always, like that was always the dreaded thing. Like, oh my God, I'm not going to get home tonight because I just got like a Sanchez or something, and I know I've got a lot of false positives to go through. Boom, boom, not the same. All that stuff now, we've got the tools to solve or to reduce the impact of a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And yet 19 years in of doing this, like we haven't fixed it, man. And that's why I'm still doing it, because we haven't finished it yet. We've still got work to do. Right. So it's changed lots. We've got lots of technology, data, know-how, skills. We've added so much more competence as well to what we're doing. It's not a tick box exercise anymore. It's not just an opening account function or whatever. But yeah, we've got a long ways to go, and that's why we're still here. And that's why there's still a need for firms like the one I work for now. We're here to I'm here to make me redundant, right? Like that's what I say all the time. Make me redundant. Nobody should have to do the kind of work that I did, right, to the extent that I did it, because it wasn't a good use of my company's money. They were paying me too much to do the things that I was doing. Mm-hmm. Nope. Drawing structure charts physically, I loved it because I'm not a great drawer, but drawing squares with rows was great for me, and I like art. So I was like, that's my art. I'm indulging my passion for creating. But it wasn't a good use of their money, mm-hmm. and technology can produce a structure chart like that with data, right? So like, it wasn't a good use of their money. It wasn't a good use of my time. So we have to figure it out. How the hell are we going to do it? Make me redundant, because we will find new things to do. We've got loads of work to do, Louis. There's loads of other things to get involved in, like the disciplines in which you work, like sanctions and fraud, which is super hot, interesting, needs a lot of brain power to figure it out and how to get ahead. KYC bit, we should really be further than we are, I think.
But like you're saying, KYC is helping a lot with the manual nature of KYC. Have you seen kind of, now that technology has taken a lot of the manual nature out of it, do you think you've seen the progress you would have expected to see? No. Can you give us a bit more on that?
Yes. Yeah, no. One example, I watched your show, that was last episode with Sona from Avalon. I haven't met him actually before, but you were talking about like appropriate levels of questions and due diligence to apply based on to whom you're speaking, right? And there's an example of something which should be super easy to do. I like proportionality. We talked about, I've got some very good friends at Nodea, a place that I really loved working at. People really, really passionate about delivering excellence and doing great things. The executing is very hard to do in an organisation of that size, as you know. But the people really want to think deeply about how to make things better and do things the right way. Proportionality was always at the heart of it. It was like, do we have to do something? Yes, no. Should we do something? The moral question of should we do something, but is it proportionate? Is it proportionate to ask 37 questions of the mom and pop shop about their sanctions and what sanctions program they've got in place? Of course it's not. So let's not apply that one size fits all. There are still too many one size fits all approaches to KYC, as you know, and you talked about it with Sona, so there's no point me repeating that, but that's just one tiny example of how we've not come nearly as far as we ought to have done. Look, man, I really, really believe it when I say it, and it's not like some kind of glib thing. I always believe that if you've got the right technology or technologies to underpin it, and you plug in the right data, internal, external, or otherwise, that thing will move. Mm-hmm. The execution, and I'm a big picture thinker, but the execution is very difficult because bringing technology in to organizations which themselves are deeply complex legacy architecture, multiple, the core banking platforms operating in different markets, it's very difficult to weld all that together and make it work. And I am naive to think that it's super easy because I don't understand the tech. Right. Like, I'm not a tech guy, right? I'm a big picture, and then we're all going to be okay, right? And then I can go and make coffee and enjoy my life, right? Right. You bought the technology now. It's like, no, but we now need to implement the thing. And we've got all these considerations to make. And that's the bit that's probably precluded us as an industry from really getting to where I thought and hoped we would be. Right. Because it's the bit of actually the doing. It's super difficult to do the final bit. We can certainly address the market. We can buy the data. We can collect more. We can do our best. And we can buy the technology that we think is going to do it. But it's all these other bits, the bits that I just don't have the time or to really see through. It's super difficult, man.
So I guess, from everything you said, I think it's clear technology is not the silver bullet. It's not the savior. There has to be something else. So how do we fix this problem, right? How do we fix this KYC problem? For me, and as you said, I've mentioned this before, talking to Suna and others, is fundamentally, I feel anti-financial crime programs are flawed from the outset because we get KYC wrong. Yeah. We don't give it the right attention. We don't, like you said, we don't formulate the right questions, or it becomes a tick the box exercise. We don't do appropriate the periodic reviews. I've been at many banks where they just sit on them and sit on them and sit on them, and it becomes this huge problem that they can't get through. The regulator comes in and slams them. They hire an army of consultants to get through it. Yeah. They get through it, but then what happens? It just becomes a problem again.
It's just shoveling snow while it's still snowing, right?
There has to be something we can do to fix this problem, right? Maybe getting back to fundamentals. Is maybe on the tech side, but I'm curious, how do you see it? How do we fix this KYC problem?
Maybe the question in itself is too aspirational. Maybe there is no fixing it, right? Okay. We have to maybe come to terms with the fact that we can't fix.
Proportionally?
To go back to proportionate, right? But really, I think that this thing about fixing, right? We've got this real idea about we can end financial crime. We can fix KYC. It's never going to be fixed because it's always going to be something. It's probably always going to be something we have to do. So if you have to do it, then it's not fixed, right? It's fixed when you don't have to do it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to think about it. It's fixed, right? It's if you've got a leak in your roof, right? Yeah. When it stops leaking and the water stops dripping into the bucket that you had, that's fixed, right?
In that way of thinking, yeah. But I think I wouldn't say so. The way I think about it in financial crime, if I'm talking about fixing anything, we would be out of a job if it goes by your term. But I don't see it that way. I think of fixed being that we have a better idea of how to address it And now we're getting a bit closer of catching up to the criminal.
Yeah.
I know we will never be there, as you said. Like, I think it's pretty close to impossible because the way criminals work is without regulation, without law.
They don't have to play by rules. They don't have to play by rules. So it's we're always at a disadvantage there. Look, and I do understand the question. I do understand the thing, but I've got a different answer for it entirely. Really, like you said, and you almost answered it anyway. I think. The KYC, I'm very lucky to have fallen into the KYC anyway. It was not my career thing. I was in a band. I came to Denmark and I wanted to be in a band.
Really?
Yeah, I was playing music.
He was a busker?
Not a busker. I wouldn't lower myself to that. Plus, I wasn't good enough to do all the things at once. I can get the tambourine and the guitar and the singing at the same time with the cymbal behind me with it flat like a little monkey or something. I don't know. No, but I mean, I fell into it and I've just ridden on this crest of a wave of it becoming a really big thing because it's become like so big. And I've just carried on with it and it hasn't really thrown me off yet, the wave, because there's still work to do. Like, look, making the KYC is pretty much foundational to everything. Yeah. I believe, when we talk about AI, and we talk about it a lot, and I'm having to, talk about it more and more, despite not being an AI guy, KYC guy. The data is foundational to it, right? Ultimately, like, it's got to work with something input to make it do something. And if the thing that goes into it is good, then the concomitant or the sort of the related sort of processes and benefits thereof then are realized, right? And the same for the KYC. And Sony talked about it, and everyone talks about it. If the KYC is good and it's hot and it's relevant and it's fresh out of the oven and it's it's still live and things, then that gives you at least a better foundation from which to work, because I think we're seeing much more in the way of contextual analysis and working more towards a controls environment or like a monitoring environment about behavior, rather than just what did their what's the KYC say? Did it tick all the boxes? It's much more about how are they behaving? Is it in line with, what we know about them and what we understood about them? And if what you knew about them was 5 years ago, then there's a fair chance that they're not behaving the way that they maybe intended to 5 years ago. So if you're looking at their, if you've got a benign way of getting more information from that customer or client and understanding them better, then your controls can then be, or the thresholds for them can be toggled accordingly so that their behavior, in that life cycle is still commensurate with how they are, because that company has grown, they've changed their business model, or they're a bit bigger than they were. So of course they're sending money, they're doing cross-border payments where 5 years ago they said they wouldn't, right? So I think moving to, if the KYC is hot and fresh out of the oven, and it's as much as possible anyway, then the way that you set the controls going forward then are also commensurate, or at least they're relative to what you know. But if what you know about them was years ago, then of course things are going to break, right? And then you create alerts, and then you got a bunch of stuff, a curve to flatten of work to do, right?
The way I would summarize that beautiful rant was KYC is dynamic. Just as people say sanctions is fraud, maybe not so much AML, but not to throw a dig at the AML people.
Famils.
Exactly. But, it's dynamic and it should be treated as such. Right. Yeah. So just because somebody said something at one point doesn't mean that that's always true for their business. Just because they've transacted in a certain way doesn't mean that it'll always be that way. Yeah. But that's why, for me, it's also important, and I think you alluded to it, is you have to keep the lines of communication open. Yes. Because what I've also seen in my experience is that we'll get in the documents, like, I guess, calling back your experience with the Norwegian customer service person or relationship manager was, I've known them forever, I trust them, and we'll do some light, Googling or and see, okay, does it all match? Yeah, it's reasonable. Let's let it go. But they're missing the communication with their client. Yeah.
And the thing is with that one is that, that guy probably did, because an ADD measure that we had somewhere I worked was a site visit, right? You had to show that you went to the place so that they were located where they were. You would hold up, I think they actually genuinely, I'm not even kidding you, they genuinely would hold up a day's newspaper to prove that today's newspaper, I'm sitting in front of the office of this wealth manager or this family office in Qatar. So here I am with the day's paper to show you that. And that was like an EDD thing that the RM would have to go and do to prove a site visit, right? I'm sure that this relationship manager in Norway had lots of site visits where he met the guy, but did he ask any questions which were relevant or pertinent to how we understood how they would actually behave? And that's the question. It was probably more like good to see you, old boy, and how's your brother getting on? I must take my shoes in there because I got a hole in them and the snow's getting. Right. So like it's that, isn't it? And I'll give you I'll try and be brief. A good example of this about current and touch points. I banked with a bank still, to some extent, with a very large UK, Hong Kong, UK bank.
We don't know who that is.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's fine. I banked with HSBC. And when I moved, I started banking with them in 2012 or 2013 when I moved back to London from Copenhagen. And I stayed with them for 6 years, got my salary paid in there, loved HSBC, fantastic bank, and they were in Canary Wharf right next to where I worked, so it was great. When I moved back to Denmark, I moved to Denmark and I opened a relationship with Nordea and Danske Bank actually, and banked with them very happily and very gladly, and worked for Nordea very happily and really loved working there too. But then I moved back to London again about 3.5 years later. And HSBC had no idea that I'd even been gone, because they were sending the things to me and I hadn't had any emails or anything from them to say, hey, it's time to get up to date. The day after I moved back to London, I got an email or a letter from Nordea saying, so you've moved, time for you to move off your account, we'll move you to an international account. And then at some point they finally kicked me out of the bank because I had to, they're not keeping those accounts anymore because they're plugged into data from the people register in Denmark, right? Now, it kind of sits at odds with some of my sort of personal and political beliefs about government intervention into our lives. I don't want lots of regulation and red tape.
That's a different episode.
I know it's a different episode, but what I'm saying is that it's at odds with it because I really like transparency. I want transparent ownership registers so that then we can do our jobs. But equally, I'm also thinking about the angle of what about the people who are good people? Who own companies, why should their personal information be put on public registers for anyone? Because that can, spark a whole new level of crime because now you know where a rich guy lives. So it's a conflict for me, but plugging into data and doing something with it is foundational to it, right? That's what I'm really into. A nerve center of, can we be on top of the stuff that we need to be on top of so that when things change, as they inevitably do, like me, I moved house, I've moved back, the bank can help. My bank can manage their risk, but they can also serve me better, right? If I move somewhere, they might say, "Oh, you've moved there. That's not a great part of London. You might want to get some insurance for what." Like these are the benefits, the sort of associated benefits. If you're allowed to share that information that you collect and you gather in that process, there's a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you can find a benign way to collect information and understand things about your customer without bothering them too much, that's the dream.
That's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot, right? And I think that, as you said about periodic ODD sort of cycles, backing them up and having them in, like, I saw the forecasting. September was a big month for ODDs. For February and March were big months and we had big spikes. But obviously July, August, nobody opened accounts in July and August because they were on holiday. Yeah. So like if you can find a way to sort of periodically or perpetually kind of gather little bits here and there and then drop in with your customer in the app and say, hey, it's time to check your information. They do that now because Revolut does it now with me. HSBC always did it, I think. It's time to check something. And it's just these little touch points which are a bit less. It's like, this won't hurt at all. It's just a little jab. That's a good way to do it, I think, I feel like that's good.
And for me, I think you hit the nail on the head where it becomes a communication thing because you're going to say to the customer, hey, because I think what happens now is that they'll say, hey, customer, we need this information because compliance told us we need it. We already have this information, but give it to us again.
Yeah.
Instead of saying to what you were saying is, hey, customer, this is the information we have on you. Can you confirm it or update what's needed? Because we want to ensure that we can service you better.
Yeah.
Right? It's the way you communicate, is the way you kind of spin it.
Yeah.
If you spin it as, I'm bothering you but I don't really want to, of course the customer is also going to be annoyed. But if you come to it as, hey, we want to protect you, we want to offer you better services, then you get more buy-in.
Yeah. Look, we all subscribe to services from lots of things. I don't want to be contacted I want self-service. I don't want to be contacted by anyone. I think gradually, through the sort of advent of KYC and sadly crime, we're all expecting now. KYC is kind of in the sort of lexicon of the everyday person now, right? Like people know what it is. And it's not just, that's just for like people who trade derivatives or anything, It's not like everyone's got some kind of know your customer, know who you're doing business with obligation. So like it is growing in the sort of collective conscious of society. It's sad, right? Because I don't want to talk to HSBC and Revolut with whom I can bank with both of them. I don't want you to write to me, and I don't want BT and bloody anyone else. And as the reach of AML regulation extends now into other areas now. I don't want now that every time I buy anything, like if I buy a reasonably high value item, because everything costs more than £1,000 these days, right? I mean, like my shopping is like, my gas bill is going to be like £1,000, right, this month. I don't want to have to do KYC for everything that I do. Yeah. So if you can find a way to say, look, we have to do this. We're sorry. This is something we have to do, but it's to protect you. And it's to protect society as a whole. And I think Fleming Clausen talks about society a lot. He's very samfundssinnet, as they say in Danish, is community-minded, right? He's very community-minded and society-minded, and I think that's the thing, right? There's a thing about, it's not just for us to meet our obligations, or at least, we'd be like, for you to understand that there is a societal impact to this as well, and it's also to protect you. And if we can get that across to them, then it maybe makes it a bit easier, and we might get better uptake. But honestly, I hate to be bothered by banks as well. I get enough emails every day. Yeah, it's mostly from subscription services saying, do you want to buy more magnesium? Hair loss, would you like something for those temples that seem to be getting bigger every time you go on camera? Yes, I would actually. If anyone wants to sponsor the show and provide me some free hair treatment or something, I'm all ears.
Oh, well, look at that luscious hair, man.
I say that, but I see different, I see problems. I see the bits where the hair is not,
Yeah, that's, I guess, human nature, right? Always what we don't have.
Try and get a sponsor for the show. Make it a hair. They loads of money, man. Make it a hair thing.
So yeah, I mean, I was gonna, I think, bother you with something else, but I'm gonna let you off the hot seat with one more question. How do practitioners stay sane with all this stuff going on, with trying to do things right? What's your kind of pearl of wisdom to keep us sane?
You're making an assumption that I'm sane.
Or maybe it's just that we're all insane.
Yeah.
To me,
there must be a song there.
Because I too fell into this by accident, and you watched this to the Suna interview. He also fell into this by accident, so we all must be crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I am crazy. I know I'm crazy. I'm told it every time, and the pill packet that I have to fill out every morning tells me as well. No. How do you stay sane? Talking about it, I think talking about things helps you, right? I mean, like, we've all got things going on, and I've really enjoyed the doing of the KYC, and I do enjoy talking about it, but there's also that thing of, can we move past the talking part now? I want to see the outcome. I want to see the fruits of our labour as well. Like, I have got like quite a short, not attention span. I've got a short attention span, I suppose. It's staying sane.
Is it attention or patience that you like?
All of the above.
Okay.
You know what? You're doing it, Louis. You're doing it, right? You've got a social network almost of fin crime people and KYC people that come, and I think the best thing to do is come and share insights. And Fleming talks about education, and there'll be lots of people that will come on the show as well that will probably talk about data sharing and the ability for cross-border stuff and things. They say it a lot now. Sunlight is like the greatest disinfectant and things. With anything, and talking things out is the way to do it, and that's how we're going to stay sane, Louis. But
therapy.
I don't mind talking about other things. I really try to not be too heavy on the hard stuff. I want to have fun doing what I do, and I will find a way to have fun.
And that's a great point, because the best teams that I've worked on, we found ways to have fun, even though we were in the trenches. But it's that camaraderie of being in the trenches and just having that ability, like you said, to talk and to joke. Yeah. That's definitely, I think, the best medicine.
It is, man. And I'm a bit much for people in certain trenches, and they'd probably like me to go into the enemy trench so they can throw a grenade into it. But I have my fun. That's all I can do. And if anyone else enjoys it, then I'm your friend.
Awesome. So on that note, I want to thank you again, man. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a long time coming, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again.
If you want me, of course.
Of course, man.
If the sponsors...
So just to kind of wrap things up, if you want to become a member, again, nfcp.info, the information's all there. Follow us on LinkedIn so you can see all the things that we're doing and we're up to. We also want to hear feedback from you, because NFCP is a community or a therapy, or therapy, however you look at it.
Both, yeah.
But we want to hear from you, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, any suggestions you have. Again, this community is for you, for us. So yeah, with that said, stay vigilant, stay classy, stay brave. And this has been the Network for Financial Crime Prevention podcast. Take care, everyone.
Good job, Louis. We didn't even talk about the New York Mets.
No, I was going to say that too. I was like, as like on a personal note, this guy out of nowhere, he's like, yeah, I like baseball.